We're back.
We're back.
We're back at Dinosaur
with
Story.
another episode of Why Wasn't It Better? I'm your host, Patrick Darms.
And I'm your co-host, Anton Paras.
I like to think every episode we record is special, but this one is extra special because we are once again, for the second time in the history of this podcast, covering a movie that has just come out in the theaters.
Another same week recording as well.
That's right. We may end up releasing this early over the weekend. What do you think, Anton? Do we have a reason?
I think that'd be fun. I think that'd be fun. Why not?
I was debating because it's a holiday weekend. You know, maybe nobody wants to listen to an awesome movie podcast. Yeah, we might as well do it.
But what is the film? We've been teasing it. What's the film, Patrick?
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. You may have heard of this one. It's fairly high profile.
If you haven't seen the billboards and the ads all around town, folks, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Harrison Ford's return as everyone's favorite archaeologist adventurer.
Who are your top 5 favorite archaeologists?
Does Nathan Drake count as one?
I don't think so. He's also not a real person.
Oh, so in history, I'm gonna have to table this one just because there's so many to name. It's so hard to just choose 5.
Too numerous to think of. Indiana Jones would be high on the list, though.
Very high. I mean, the
he
fact
sure
that
seems like a real person in this movie.
Well, they made 5 of these films after his life, very autobiographical. So
it's a good way to put it.
Indiana Jones.
Any admin you want to take care of before we get into the discussion of this one?
Are we getting close to the dog days of summer?
We are. And in celebration of the dog days of summer, we decided to make all of our recordings available on our YouTube channel.
Yes.
So check that out. We're going to post it with in the release notes for this week's episode. So you'll have a link to the
Why
YouTube
Wasn't It Better
channel.
Summer Special. Check us out on YouTube.
Yeah. Except it's here to stay at no charge.
Exactly.
Yeah, we were advised by several of our listeners who were like a little angry about it, I have to say. They're like, why aren't you on YouTube? Like, okay, I guess we'll put everything on YouTube. Just one more thing to do, add to the list. But we've got a long way to go as we continue to get deeper into season 2. So anything else, Anton? Probably about covers it.
How are the Yankees doing, Patrick?
I mean, Domingo Germán threw a perfect game. I don't know if you caught that.
What is that the 15th perfect game in history?
I think 24th.
24th. All right, so I'm off by 10.
Yeah. Well, that's still quite rare. It's the 4th in Yankees history. Don Larson, David Wells, and David Cohn being the first 3.
Yep.
So,
are we going to say Shohei's a shoo-in for MVP?
Yeah, that guy is spectacular.
Yeah, I think it's been insane the run that he's been on lately. It's actually like pretty amazing to see quite a caliber of Hall of Famer playing right now, and I don't think that's an exaggeration to say that right now.
No, not at all. He's I can't remember the last time a player came around and looked like he has in his first few seasons. I mean, what he's doing, he really is a unicorn. That's I heard someone describe him as that, and it's apt. It's apt.
But it won't matter come the fall because everyone just pay attention to the San Francisco Giants, who are on quite a hot streak this summer.
Are they?
Oh yeah, dude. They're like they're 10-2 the last 12 games. They're second in the wild card when they're only like 1 game away, and then even then I think maybe only 3 games away from first in the Pacific. So I'm bullish on the Giants as I am every year.
I wish I could share your optimism about the Yankees. They are quite a different team without Aaron Judge, and
they're second in the wild card or something like that, right?
Yeah, but it's not what you want.
Right. Well, there's so much baseball, folks, but even then, we'll see how things are a couple weeks from now. Baseball's streaky, and who knows what'll happen come this fall.
All I know, real quick, is that the Yankees have a $250+ million payroll, and they don't have a left fielder. I don't know how that's possible, but anyway, let's talk about this movie. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Daredevil archaeologist Indiana Jones races against time to retrieve a legendary dial that can change the course of history. Accompanied by his goddaughter, Helena Shaw, he soon finds himself squaring off against Jürgen Voller, a former Nazi who now works for NASA. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was released on June 29th, 2023 by Walt Disney Pictures, Lucasfilm in association with Paramount Pictures. Directed by James Mangold, screenplay by James Mangold, Jez Butterworth, John Henry Butterworth, the Butterworth brothers, and David Koepp, based on characters created by George Lucas and Philip Kaufman, starring Harrison Ford, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Mads Mikkelsen, Antonio Banderas, Toby Jones, Boyd Holbrook, Ethan Isidore, John Rhys Davies, and Karen Allen. Budget $295 million. Wow. It's one of the 10 most expensive movies ever made. And box office? Unknown. This movie came out about 24 hours ago at the time of this recording.
I pulled the number up for the Thursday release, 7.2 million.
Mm-hmm.
So it's our starting point, but we'll see how things go.
I don't know if that's good or bad. All I know is that you and I both contributed to that. We saw this
Yes, we
movie last
did.
night. Not together, because we don't live anywhere near each other, but
Right. But I was munching on my popcorn, watching this movie intently, and just getting excited to record today with Pat. So here we are. And so many great names attached to this franchise and fun names attached to this film. Right, Pat?
yes, I would agree with that.
It's a franchise that definitely gets a lot of people excited. I know it's going to catch people's eyes when they see the title of this episode. But Patrick, why was this movie chosen?
This is the second film that we've covered that's currently in theaters, right? This just came out. The first one being Super Mario Brothers, which was earlier this year. And I wouldn't say it's a bit of a risk to include this movie, but we had a feeling this would meet the criteria for our podcast, and it more than does. It's the fifth film in one of the most famous film series of all time, one of the most beloved film series of all time, with an absolutely massive fan base, a huge following. Like you said, a lot of big names: Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Harrison Ford, John Williams. This goes back 40 years, 40 plus years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we also had a feeling that this would not get rave reviews and it would not be as beloved as some of its predecessors. And it seems like we were right about that too. So, of course, it fit the criteria for this podcast. There was no way we weren't going to cover the newest Indiana Jones movie. Now, the concept of Indiana Jones to me is that it's probably like the coolest movie idea ever, right? The history behind
Yeah,
it, like,
fair.
yeah, George Lucas came up with the idea while sitting on a beach with Steven Spielberg. Spielberg had wanted to direct a Bond movie, but Cubby Broccoli turned him down. And Lucas told him, I've got a better idea than James Bond. And that eventually became Raiders of the Lost Ark a couple of years later.
Right. Arguably one of the greatest films of all time.
I don't really know anyone that would dispute that. I do know people that have never seen an Indiana Jones movie, but it is one of those movies. I'm not talking about all of them, but particularly Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade, where pretty much everyone you know that's seen it likes it. You rarely hear anyone say, I didn't like those movies, or I thought they were boring. That's why they're so beloved, right? For exactly that
Right.
reason. Raiders of the Lost Ark is definitely one of my 10 favorite movies ever. I kind of
Oh,
like Last
same.
Crusade more, but I recognize the fact that Raiders of the Lost Ark is probably the superior movie. And I love Temple of Doom.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head in terms of how Raiders of the Lost Ark's been received through history. I think a lot of people agree with the takes. I love Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's definitely of the original trilogy my favorite. And well, we don't speak of Crystal Skull. Fun to take a look at at the Indiana Jones film franchise now with this lens of the recent release Dial of Destiny. How does it stack up to its very famous predecessors?
For the record, we can talk about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I did not hate that movie.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
think it's
All right.
good. I don't think it's good, but I do not
Shia
think it
LaBeouf
is.
disagrees with you.
I do not think it is the disaster that some people make it out to be. Shia LaBeouf. We're going to get to Shia LaBeouf. We've got a couple things to say about Shia LaBeouf later in this
Shouts
podcast.
out Shia LaBeouf. Let's get him on the show.
I'd love to have him on the show. I mean that non-sarcastically. I feel like he'd be interesting, right?
Yeah, I feel like he's a nice guy.
Huh. But yeah, I don't hate that movie. I really don't. Is it anywhere near as good as the original three? No. Those are,
But
I don't know if
what
I'd
were
call
you
Temple
hoping
of Doom.
for?
I was hoping for, I don't know. You know what? Let's save that discussion for when we actually cover Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, because we're certainly
Fair,
going to be covering that in the future.
fair. But
But as
what
far
were
as
you hoping for with Dial of Destiny?
I had no expectations at all. I mentioned this, I think, a couple of episodes ago. I certainly wasn't going into it with high expectations. Ultimately, I wanted to come out of that theater and just feel like my time was not wasted, because this is a pretty
Mm-hmm.
long movie.
Yeah.
All I can say is this. This is an interesting movie to cover, regardless of how you feel about it, just because of the history that's involved here. Before we get into the production history, I do want to give a shout out to the director of this film, James Mangold.
Yeah.
I think
Agreed.
he is a name that is becoming more well known, but those who are film buffs like us were probably aware of his name, but I would imagine the average moviegoer isn't. But he's had a pretty impressive career, and it's nice to see him finally getting the recognition he deserves, because he's directed some good stuff over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Very consistent filmmaker, very talented. I didn't even realize how long he had been working until I was just doing the research for this. Copland, Girl Interrupted, Identity, Walk the Line, 310 to Yuma. He did that Tom Cruise movie, Night and Day. I don't even think I saw that,
Mm-hmm.
but whatever. I'm going to mention it anyway. The Wolverine. I kind of enjoyed that. I liked Logan. That's a great movie. A lot of people like that movie. Ford v Ferrari was a great movie. And now this.
There's a bit of a Mangold Star universe. A few characters that have been in previous works appearing in future films and works as well. We actually saw a bit of that in Dial of Destiny. I'm also speaking specifically of Boyd Holbrook. I really like him as an actor, so it was fun to see him in this film.
I concur. He makes a great henchman.
Yes, he does. But total respects to James Mangold. Definitely puts out very quality films.
Yeah, and it is no easy feat to take over for Steven Spielberg. Imagine
No,
having to replace Steven Spielberg on a project. Like, what goes through your mind?
no easy feat at all.
Yeah. Let's get into the production history of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
The history of this film goes back to 1979. So let's put our 1979 hats on. When George Lucas and Steven Spielberg made a deal with Paramount Pictures for 5 Indiana Jones films. Around the time of the release of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in 2008, Harrison Ford would return to the role for a 5th film if it does not take another 20 years to develop. So, fair enough. We didn't quite get 20 years, but it's been a bit.
Only 15.
Only 50. So Lucas suggested an idea to make Mutt Williams, the character played by Shia LaBeouf, the lead in a 5th film, but realized this was not a great idea. Lucas began researching potential plot devices for another film in 2008 and stated that Spielberg was open to directing it. He stressed the importance of having a MacGuffin that is supernatural but still grounded in reality with an archaeological or historical background, saying, you can't just make something up like a time machine. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I have one thing to say about the Mutt Williams. Lucas ultimately decided not to use him, right?
mm-hmm.
Did he come to that conclusion himself, or did someone have to tell him? Because when it comes to storytelling decisions, and character decisions, who was trusting George Lucas at that point?
Well, I'm curious, have you also read the novelization of, or just followed like the book series for Indiana Jones and how Mutt
Yes.
Williams' story plays out? I
Yes.
think he lives a long, fruitful life in the books.
In the books. Yes. We'll get
but
back to this.
we'll get back to that. Anyway, in November 2010, Ford said that Lucas was still working on the project, so it's working in the background. October 2012, Lucas cashed out and sold Lucasfilm to Disney, giving the House of Mouse ownership rights to the Indiana Jones IP. So no longer just a ride at Disneyland. The following year, Disney purchased the distribution and marketing rights to future Indiana Jones films from Paramount, who retained some financial stake in future films as part of the deal. So that's why you still see the Paramount logo during the film's opening. So a fun call out there. And what's clear is that we should have gotten this film years earlier if it hadn't been for the sale to Disney. So shortly after the sale, Kathleen Kennedy publicly stated that Lucasfilm planned to focus on the Star Wars sequel trilogy before working on a fifth Indiana Jones film. So I'm sure that was a bummer for Harrison Ford not being able to revisit Indy, but he
Yeah,
also
I
got to
can't
go back
imagine
into
he
the
was
saddle
happy about
as
that. I
yeah,
He
but he
was
got to
like
go back in the
already,
saddle as
yeah, he was
as
already in his
Han
60s
Solo.
at that point.
Right. That's
Well, we all
fair.
know how that turned out, the Han Solo thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. So I'm sure he wasn't excited about that either. According to Kennedy, we all felt that if we could conclude the series with one more movie, given the fact that Harrison was so excited to do another one, we should do it. So Kennedy, Spielberg, and Ford had discussed a couple of story ideas by the end of 2015. In 2016, Disney announced that the fifth film would be released on July 19, 2019, with Ford reprising his role and Steven Spielberg directing. So a MacGuffin had been chosen, and David Koepp was working on the screenplay. And it was initially reported that Lucas wouldn't be involved in the project, although Spielberg later said that Lucas would serve as an executive producer. So, however, later that year, it was confirmed that Lucas would have no involvement with the project. Is that unheard of, Pat?
Well, I mean, he didn't have control at that point. He cashed out.
That's right. That's
If he was,
right. So
I don't know if he ended up bitter about it, but if he did, that's his own fault.
that's right. It's a business. Hollywood's a business, right? So
Yeah.
in 2017, the film's release date was pushed back to 2020 as Spielberg was busy working on The Post and Ready Player One. David Koepp announced that LaBeouf's character, Mutt Williams, would not appear in the film. Let's put a pin on that. Up until this point, Spielberg was going to direct it, but filming was again delayed as the script remained incomplete. Lucasfilm met with screenwriters Scott Beck and Brian Woods to explore other options. And it's worth pointing out, if you're following things around this time, the amount of fake scripts and rumored plot ideas that were floating around was just staggering. I
Oh, it
mean,
was all over the place.
yeah, everywhere. And I think that just speaks to the fandom and then the excitement and what kind of buzz goes on for the Indiana Jones IP. And did we ever think it was going to get out of development hell?
I didn't. I
Yeah,
just
same.
assumed once I heard Spielberg had dropped out, I just assumed we were never going to get it, and I had written it off.
And well, the next the next steps probably didn't give much faith to fans. Jonathan Kasdan was eventually hired to replace Koepp in mid 2018, and release date was again pushed back to 2021. So Kasdan ended up leaving the project after less than a year. Koepp re-entered the picture, ultimately writing 2 scripts, but neither was approved. So he later said that previous efforts to get the film going failed because of disagreements between Spielberg, Ford, and Disney over the script. And in February 2020, Spielberg officially stepped down as director, saying that he wanted to hand things over to a new filmmaker for a fresh perspective. I
Yeah,
wonder if
this is where I had
yeah.
lost all hope.
Yeah, is this his words or the studio's words, right?
Right. I do
So
remember reading all
yeah.
this stuff at the time.
James Mangold was hired later that year and began working on the script himself. It was Harrison Ford who suggested Mangold to Lucasfilm as a replacement. So that's a pretty strong endorsement. Mangold had considered turning down the director position as Lucasfilm wanted filming to begin in about 6 months in order to meet the 2021 release date. Mangold had wanted more time so he could refine the script. He eventually signed on the project after the COVID-19 pandemic pushed back the release date, giving him the time he sought. Mangold wrote that new screenplay with Jez and John Henry Butterworth, who worked with him previously on Ford v Ferrari.
The Butterworth brothers. Do you recognize Jez Butterworth? Do you recognize that name?
Jez Butterworth.
Yeah.
Paint a picture for us. Where are we recognizing this name?
Well, if you know your Why Wasn't It Better history, you'll know that he worked on the Skyfall script.
The Jez Butterworth?
The one and only. But he has a brother, John Henry.
Them Butterworth boys.
Those Butterworth boys. Yeah, they're going to pop up again on the next Bond movie that we cover, Spectre.
All right, well, let's get excited for more Butterworths appearing in the Why Wasn't It Better universe. So earlier films had featured Nazis as the antagonists, and Mangold and the Butterworths were inspired by Operation Paperclip as a way of reincorporating them for Dial of Destiny. The film's MacGuffin, the fictional Archimedes dial, was inspired by research that Mangold conducted into the Antikythera mechanism.
Good pronunciation.
Thank you. I couldn't do it as well as they do in the film, but I tried my best. Artistic liberty was taken with the film's dial to suit the story. The dial is named after Greek inventor Archimedes, who believed to have played a role in the creation of the real Antikythera. Fun history, fun
Yeah,
MacGuffin.
definitely. So later that year in 2021, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Mads Mikkelsen, Thomas Kretschmann, Boyd Holbrook, Antonio Banderas, and Shawnette Renee Wilson were cast in undisclosed roles. Mikkelsen said his character was partly inspired by the Nazi scientists involved in Operation Paperclip, including Werner von Braun. Now, Holbrook previously co-starred in Mangold's film Logan. By the way, he's great in that film too.
Mm-hmm.
And you shouted him out earlier. John Rhys
Oh, yeah.
Davies reprised his
Gimli.
role, yes, of Salah, for the first time since Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. John Rhys Davies is also in a James Bond movie. He plays Pushkin in The Living Daylights. Filming began in England on June 4th, 2021, at our favorite place, Pinewood Studios.
Hey, Pinewood.
Yeah, on-site filming locations included Bamburgh Castle, the North Yorkshire Moors Railway, and Glencoe, Scotland. Glasgow's city centre was transformed to resemble New York City. That's cool. They filmed that in Glasgow. The production then moved to film in Greece, Italy, and Morocco. You can see how the budget amounted to almost $300 million. Spielberg visited the set many times to watch dailies. And last but not least, John Williams returned to the series to score this.
Yes.
He has stated that this is his final film score before he retires. Keep in mind, he is 92 years old. And I just saw an interview with him recently.
John Williams.
Yeah, he's in good shape.
Wow.
He was sharp. Love to see it. We both
Did you ever
saw
watch
this last
Narcos?
night. Narcos?
Yeah,
Yeah, I've
that's
seen
just
Narcos.
Holbrook was in it. Yeah. He was in like season 1 and 2.
That was him?
Yeah, him and Pedro Pascal.
Right.
But anyway, we're talking Indiana Jones. Why is the henchman top of mind for me? Let's dive in.
It's all right. You're a fan. So yeah, let's talk about why it wasn't this better. Anton and I, we both saw this last night. It is fresh in our minds. Keep in mind, we've only seen this once. It's difficult to put this much thought into a movie having only seen it once, but we did our best. We managed to do it for Mario. We'll do the same for Indiana Jones. Number one reason that I had with this movie, it's too long.
I agree with that. And like I want to make a clear distinction for listeners. There's a movie that has length that allows a story to be told effectively. And then there's, I like to call it like the minute lasts for infinity. It's when a film just drags and it just feels boring, which is, I think, a horrible sin for any film. And we definitely felt it for this one in certain aspects.
Yeah, I don't remember ever being flat out bored. But like, for example, the prologue, right? That's set at the end of World War II, containing a de-aged Harrison Ford, digitally de-aged Harrison Ford.
Right. It wasn't super off-putting.
It wasn't super off-putting. It was passable. They were clearly relying on his old man voice, and that didn't quite fit the face. Yeah, but I mean, it's probably the best de-aging that I've seen in a movie. But
it's good that they said it at night.
Yes, they did that intelligently, I thought. But that
There's a
prologue,
lot of
that's like a
scenes where he's I was gonna say there's a lot of scenes where he's riding the motorcycle away and you can't really see his face.
yeah,
Strategic.
for sure. My main issue with that prologue, though, it's about 25 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
That's way too long. Think about the prologue of the previous movies. They're like 10 minutes tops. That's a significant difference.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's maybe this is just the Mangold style trying to put in a little bit of a heavier appetizer before the film.
There's
But
a
I
lot of
felt like
film left after that, for sure.
there
There's like a
was it was quite a bit
yeah,
of it was quite a bit of appetizer, I'd say.
yeah, because after that finishes and our story moves to 1969, we still have another 2 hours of the movie left. So it's like just a whole nother movie. All of the set pieces I thought were well executed, but I thought every single one of them went on too long. I would say as a
Right, right.
whole, the film was about 30 minutes too long for me. That's by far, I mean, this is like, what is this, 2 hours, 34 minutes? That is by far the
Hmm.
longest film of the series. It's a solid half hour longer than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Just think about that for a second.
Yeah, and parts that I feel like they tried to keep the camera on for the film, it's either because it's a pivotal points of the story, so you want folks to absorb it, but at a certain point you're just like, yeah, we get it. Like you're in the past in a plane and no one knows what's going on, or this is a very long chase scene.
Definitely. Like I said, every set piece I thought went on too long. The chase sequence in Tangier, the dive sequence was okay.
Yeah,
The
that was
horseback
actually that
chase,
was well paced.
yeah, the horseback chase with the motorcycle in New York, it was, I guess it was probably fine. But
You
the
think he was
ending
really riding that
sequence,
horse?
of course not. He's 80 years
Yeah.
old. There's no way.
Yeah.
And then the conclusion, which is set in ancient Syracuse, so to speak. Or, no, where was it set? It was like Syracuse, Sicily. That goes on for a while too. But I
Hey,
think the
shouts out
one,
to upstate New York.
yes, I think the best example of a set piece going on too long is the one I mentioned in Tangier. It's well shot, it's well scored. It starts off with the amusing auction scene. You have Indy, Helena, and Teddy chasing Voller in an attempt to get the dial back, who are themselves being chased by the Moroccan gangsters, including her like ex fiance or whatever.
Hmm.
Too many layers, too many characters. There's too much stop and start. And I was trying to like time it all because I'm always curious about how long action sequences go, what the average is.
Hmm.
That was like another 20-minute sequence. Didn't need to be that long. But as a whole, this is possibly a larger discussion to have that we
Right.
could continue as we, in future episodes. It's something I'm really interested in though, is what is with this recent trend where every blockbuster needs to be 150 minutes. 2 hours used to be the
Hmm.
industry standard for a blockbuster forever. A movie had to be really, really good to be longer than that. Like, what changed? Do the studios want to justify the budgets they're splurging on? Like, I honestly don't know.
I have no idea. It could be all sorts of things, whether it's contract disputes with how much face time certain actors are getting than others. Maybe just a commit, yeah, exactly, commitments to how to actually get those budgets approved. But I think this definitely was a case of it. It didn't have to be this long.
No. This fits into the same way I felt about The Dark Knight Rises, where I'm like, this is a Batman movie. Why is this approaching 3 hours? And what's that? What was the newest The Batman with Robert Pattinson?
Yeah,
Really awesome stuff in that. Some of the best Batman stuff I've ever seen in a movie. But why was it 3 hours?
yeah. There's particularly. Let's think about. I actually kind of want to look at this from the perspective of like the diving scene. They're in the Aegean Sea. They're looking
Right.
for the map that would take them to Archimedes' tomb, and they actually built in like a time limit. Like they couldn't be under what was it? They couldn't be underwater for 3 minutes.
They can only stay at the bottom for
Right.
3 minutes.
They could only stay at the bottom for 3 minutes. So I think that tension and pace actually really helped out when showed putting the limitation on the time, you still were able to absorb all of the tension, the suspense, and then eventually getting out of it. And then it also was a nice catapult into the next scene. So
Definitely.
the chase scene kind of in comparison went on forever. So
Yeah, they did that right
yeah.
for sure, the dive sequence, because anytime you're involving action underwater, it's just like automatically slower and more boring. So by setting
Mm-hmm.
that time limit on themselves, they really helped things out. But I
Right.
just wish they had done it for some of the other action scenes. I'm telling you, if you trim 20, 30 minutes out of this movie, it works a lot better.
Like, is Tangier that big that it took that long to drive through?
Yeah, I mean, again, I have to see the movie again, but there's a couple start and stops where they get on a different tuk tuk, I think, or like one of them crashes. But remember, they're chasing someone and they're getting chased by other people who are
Mm-hmm.
not associated with the people that they're chasing. So it's a lot going on for an action sequence.
Right, right.
Number two reason why this wasn't better: the characters. What do you think of the characters in it? Did anyone annoy you?
I I felt like a few characters were throwaways, but I like the characters for the most part. Of
Same.
course, I love Indy and the return of a few characters, which is always the nostalgia bait that gets me. But yeah, in general, I like them. Well, how about you?
I generally agree. None of the characters outright annoyed me, like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. That character Mac in that movie,
Mm,
I could not stand him. Couldn't stand the actor. What the other character, Oxley, the guy played by John Hurt, the guy who
hmm
had
hmm
essentially been driven crazy by the Crystal Skull. It was a waste of
Yeah.
John Hurt's talent, unnecessary character. The writing of the characters in this movie was in I think in some cases quite bizarre with some of the decisions that they made. But I do want to talk about what I liked. Harrison Ford's performance was very heartfelt.
Yes.
Great
Agreed
acting
with that.
performance by him, but I look, there's no way around it. It's the elephant in the room. He's just simply too old for this kind of role. There was at least
Yeah,
three times in the movie where I just said to myself, like, damn, he's old. I thought he was too old 15 years ago in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
you could tell it was a past his prime Harrison Ford taking some or throwing some punches. Those were not
Yeah,
some those were not some classic Indiana Jones style punches.
no, no. Now, his acting is very good. The scene on the boat where he's talking about Mutt, it was some of the best work I've seen from Harrison Ford. I don't want to give too
Agreed.
many spoilers. By the way, when we get into spoilers, we will give a disclaimer.
Yeah, so spoiler warning this whole episode basically.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we probably should have mentioned that maybe, I don't know, sooner than 38 minutes into recording, but whatever.
But we'll put it we'll put it in the description for the episode. Spoiler warning. We talk about
Oh,
things that
yeah.
happen in the movie.
Good idea. Were you interested in seeing him as an old, grizzled, alcoholic, emotionally dead character? Like, is that what you wanted to see, Anton?
Arguably yes, but
Really?
it depended on the story being told, and it depended on how they, because like I like to think that, and that was part of the Last Crusade with Sean Connery's character, is like age doesn't dictate the class or the ability of the adventurer to really like do his best adventuring. And I think there were a lot of moments in this film where we saw an old Harrison Ford and we thought, is this just going to be a sad over the hill version of Indiana Jones? But it was really more of about Indiana Jones discovering himself again. And so I feel like that is something to embrace, especially for a franchise that's grown older, also for a lot of the fan base that's gotten older over the years.
But you agree he just works better as a younger character.
As yes, as a in general, yes.
Okay. I did not want to see him in this state. I don't know if the majority of audiences would either. I found it kind of depressing in a way, like the life that he had
Mm-hmm.
been living before he goes on this adventure. It's like he, at the end of Crystal Skull, they made him dean of the college. Like, what happened? Really, no explanation for that. I thought Crystal Skull did a way better job of giving old man Indy, a satisfying ending, a happy
Mhm.
ending. Here's where the
I mean,
spoilers are going to begin from me. So
yeah.
there's the warning to all the listeners. Sorry, you were going to say something?
I was gonna say, like, I think it was a bit more to me. While it was sad, it was depressing to see him in that state. Like mentioned it earlier, I think reflecting on it is actually really nice to see that there's this added layer of something to look at, not just an adventure film, but also it was definitely an exploration of age, identity, and being able to accept that change. And it just feels so real because not only are we getting older, but our heroes are getting older. Our heroes are old. I mean, Indiana Jones is uh, ancient at this point, but he was still able to go on an adventure and by the end, I think rediscover himself. So I think that was if the film was trying to point out how old he was, like as an actor and as an adventurer, they did a good job.
Yeah, I think they were trying to do that.
Yeah, so good job on their part. Was there anything from a storytelling aspect utilizing the characters that surprised you?
Yeah. His son getting killed in Vietnam was a bizarre storytelling decision. That is a
Yeah.
decision with a capital D. I was genuinely saddened by this in the movie. I found it curious as well because it really had no bearing on the plot. It was a very deliberate decision on their part to kill off that
Hmm.
character. I have to wonder how much of that was payback against Shia LaBeouf for trashing the fourth film in interviews, because he had a lot of harsh things to say about that. And I know Harrison Ford and Steven Spielberg did not appreciate it.
No, but I think what's the unfortunate thing is you really do see an Indiana Jones character that's been through the ringer, separated from his wife, son's been killed, definitely feeling like he's out of his depth. So
Yeah,
it's a sadder Indiana Jones.
it's very sad. Like I said, that is not anything that I was interested in seeing. It was a big turnoff for me.
Can you think of another film that Mangold directed that had very similar themes?
Yeah, Logan. I mean,
Logan.
yeah,
Logan. I
the
mean,
connections there are clear. That's definitely his influence. It's I don't think it helped the movie, but Phoebe Waller Bridge, what did you think?
she was fun. Not my. She was fun. Not my favorite character. That's
No,
my take.
yeah, I don't agree with anyone who says that she ruined the movie, but I
No,
will say
not at
this:
all.
I enjoyed her performance. Have you ever seen Fleabag?
I haven't.
I haven't either, but I've seen enough YouTube clips of it that I like to think that I've seen it.
Hmm.
Her style of acting is quite specific. Her humor is very specific. It's very sarcastic. It's very dry. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea.
Right.
I said I thought she gave a strong performance. I liked a lot of her lines. She could hold her own in a fight. I liked all that. She has a lot of stuff to do. I can understand how she may turn a lot of people off. Like I said, it's a very specific type of humor that she brings to the table. It's not for everyone. I don't know if I'd call that an issue. I didn't find it an issue, but I can see why people would. I can also see why people would have the other issue with her character, which is she is not a side character. She's very much the co-star here. This
Right.
is just as much her movie as it is Harrison Ford's. Like I don't know what the tally is, but I would imagine their screen time is about equal.
They played well off of each other.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I said,
Mm,
I can see how that would bother people, like taking issue with that. Like, what do you mean Indiana Jones isn't even the lead in his own movie? Like, I get it.
yeah, I mean I get that, but I also get like people were already thinking and they teased it in Crystal Skull like, oh, is Shia LaBeouf going to head the next Indiana Jones film? Is this the legacy that will carry on? Is this a passing of the torch? And you can't help but think that, like, is that who this character is? That who Phoebe Waller Bridge's character is in this film? And the more you kind of think about that, the more you're like, well, she is also a criminal that sells like historical artifacts and has a
Yeah,
gambling problem and
yeah, definitely a far less scrupulous character than Indiana Jones. But then again, young Indy was a different thing, right?
right, right.
Like, remember at the beginning of Temple of Doom, all he's trying to do is sell the remains of some dead Chinese emperor for money. That's all he wanted. He just wanted
That's
that diamond, fortune and glory.
such a fun film.
I can't wait to cover Temple of Doom. I love that
Such a
movie.
fun film.
It's a weird movie, but it is so much fun to watch.
Yeah, getting back to Dial of Destiny. But what did you think of Short Round Light?
Well, Short Round Light is a very good way to describe the character of Teddy. I don't know how necessary his character is. He certainly did not have the charisma that Short Round did.
No,
He plays a major role in the third act and finale of this film, so I guess that's how you justify having the character.
it
But
was
I don't know. He
he
didn't ruin the movie for me. It wasn't like that.
no, but I don't think child sidekicks is a it's not a necessary component of Indiana Jones films. It's been seen in a Indiana Jones film. I think that they obviously were trying to emulate Short Round, but
100%.
they also I don't know. For me, it felt like a very unnecessary character, and one could argue having a child in the fray just adds an extra element of high stakes. You don't want anything bad happening to the kid, and that
Yeah,
in itself starts to open up like maybe something creatively on how is he going to get out of things. Is he used as leverage, which he is used he becomes a hostage in part of the story,
yeah.
so serves as part of the storytelling. But comparing Teddy's character to Short Round, it's not really apples to apples.
No, Short Round didn't kill anybody.
Right. Short Round did not, but Teddy can definitely add killing a Nazi to his list of things done by I'm assume age 12.
Yeah, at least it was a Nazi.
At least it was a Nazi. But what a way to go. That is just
Yeah,
yeah, what a way to go.
bad way to go. Drowning. What did you think of the villain, Voller,
So
whatever,
I
played
love
by
so
Mads Mikkelsen?
I love Mads Mikkelsen. So when I saw that he was attached to the film as the main villain, I was really excited. I think that that's someone with a lot of range, and I was I'm not going to say surprised, but I was satisfied with the performance. He's
Yeah,
a great actor.
yeah. He never gives a bad performance. I think the best thing about it, he reminded me of Hugo Drax in Moonraker, who was played by an actor named Michael Lonsdale. His performance
Right.
was good. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, very dry. He's a
Hmm.
pretty fleshed out villain. Right? His motivations are clear. His capabilities are clear. He has more of a personality than like Mola Ram from Temple of Doom or Walter Donovan from Last Crusade. One thing I did notice about him, though, he's basically Red Skull from Captain America, except he's not really intimidating and he doesn't really do anything memorable.
Yeah, that's fair. Just kind of more orders people around and does his best to lead the ship as they're going on the chase Indiana Jones around the world trip.
Yeah. He also has a pretty lame death, which I'll get to a little bit later.
Hmm.
The demise of the villains in this movie is pretty lackluster, if you ask me. Now, your boy Boyd Holbrook, great henchman. I liked him. And it was nice to see Sala again. That was cool. Speaking
I
of looking
was
old, John Rhys Davies, wow. Looks
yeah,
like Gimli. He
yeah,
looks like Gimli's great great grandfather at this point.
but love seeing that same energy and exuberance,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Back to Boyd. I thought it was really interesting that I at first I thought like, oh, this dude's like with the CIA or something, and then it's like, oh no, he's a personal bodyguard, and then by the film's third act, you're like, this guy's a Nazi.
Yeah.
Interesting because of his southern accent. One could argue, oh, is this kind of like more like a is this neo-Nazi like
Yeah,
origin?
they didn't make it explicitly clear. I had the same questions you did though. I'm like, is he just working for the CIA, like watching him, or is he really a collaborator of Voller's? And he was. Oh, interesting. The Red Skull connection. They even gave him the name Schmidt. It's pretty blatant.
So very clearly there were some parallel. There were some
Yeah,
very on the nose parallels.
yeah. I'm not crazy for thinking this, right? You agree with this? Like his plan is very, very
No, I
similar to. He's like, oh, I'm going to displace Hitler. It's like, okay, that's what Red
yeah,
Skull
it's
tried to
a
do.
right. It's a I actually was kind of hoping that maybe it was the device itself would allow you to either go into like become your younger self. And I feel like that would have been an even cooler aspect in the third film, maybe revisiting moments of time
Travel to
as
some
like
other dimension through a wormhole, like some kind of a tesseract.
or maybe as some sort of hot tub time machine.
Also, that. Uh, Marion's Return. What did you think?
Oh, Marion. Very heartwarming. Again, that's the nostalgia. Those are nostalgia beats that I enjoy.
Yeah, I didn't hate it. What did she mean though when she said to Indy, she's like, "Someone told me you're back. Are you back?" Like, what does that mean? Back from what? He was in the same damn apartment we see him in before.
Um,
Back from what?
it's probably alluding to the depression that Indy was in. I think we touched on this earlier. This is a very depressing version of Indiana Jones. He's alcoholic. He's
Yep, yep.
retiring. He's separated from his wife. He talks about how he can't console his inconsolable wife, but one could even read between the lines and say he's the one that hasn't really recovered. And so maybe that's what Marion's alluding to. Are you feeling like yourself again?
I was confused by it. He had just woken up from like a coma, and she was like, "Are you back?" It's like, maybe.
It's like he's been here.
Yeah,
But no, I think it's more the metaphysical. Are you back?
fair. Good word, metaphysical. Last reason why this wasn't better, just some thoughts about the production in general. I just want to say for the record, I was beyond disappointed they didn't have the Paramount logo fade into some kind of a mountain. They featured the logo, but they
That would have
deliberately
been cool.
chose not to do that. That had to be Disney was just like, do not let this happen.
They were in the Alps.
Right? Right. Yes. Like, what the hell? It's a small nit to pick, but I actually think it's bigger than that. What did you think about the Dial of Destiny, the MacGuffin?
I think it's fine. We'll maybe start to talk about the plot and the writing and what didn't make sense, but time travel is hard to write. And
Yeah.
eh,
It's risky
yeah,
business, time travel.
right, right.
But I will say this, at least the stakes involved were clear. If Uber Nazi Doctor gets it, he can go back in time, and that's bad for everyone. That made a lot more sense to me than whatever it was that the Crystal Skulls did.
Right. Yeah, that made sense. It was a very clear cut, do not let this guy get the dial.
Yeah, I'd love to know how much control Mangold really had. Like, Disney obviously trusted him enough to let him co-write it, but this is a Disney movie. You have to assume
Mm-hmm.
he didn't have final say over everything. Just a
I'm sure
guess.
if it was up to, I mean, looking at Mangold's films and looking at the kind of how stories played out, I wouldn't be surprised if in a like in a director's cut version, Indy dies at the end.
I really hope not.
I mean, as depressing as that is, like that's the kind of film that's the kind of story probably Mangold would want to tell. Is like,
Yeah,
and
you
then
might be
on
right.
to the next generation.
Indiana Jones and the story of Wolverine.
I don't know, man. I really did feel like there was a lot of parallels to Logan
I
in this
I
film.
I agree with you, and I don't think it was for the better. But that's just
Yeah, it
look.
was
It's all subjective, right? Like you don't mind seeing Indiana Jones in that state. I do. That's all it is.
right, right. That's fair. And I am, I do like I like the layers and depth that presents, which is why like I don't mind seeing Indiana Jones like that. It's a bit of a subversion of the expectation of the character, but
It's
it's
true.
also like, well, then you're not getting the character. You're just getting like a really sad ass story from what could have been a much better adventuring swashbuckling story that one would expect from Indiana Jones.
It's true. In Mangold's favor, I thought all the action sequences were well done, even though, like I said, I thought they went on too long. They're all well
Mm-hmm.
filmed, and I thought he had a good sense of spatial
Yeah.
geography. Everything flowed pretty nicely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My favorite part, my favorite little bit, was during the parade in New York when Boyd Holbrook shoots the gun.
Yep.
Everyone
In the
hits the
air.
ground except Indiana Jones because he's been shot at hundreds of times. Such a cool little moment.
Yeah, that was a fun scene. and then the ensuing chase.
Yeah, it was really well executed. The production design in particular, I thought was outstanding. There was a lot of attention to detail, and it really looked like it was filmed in 1969.
Oh
Nothing
yeah,
nothing
I
really
mean, I
felt
felt
like a
that.
set.
Yeah, it was very beautifully shot. The lighting, I think even like whatever tone they used on how like especially like they were in New York, I was like this feels like the 60s.
Yeah, they did a good job of it. I liked the cinematography a lot better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Obviously, not as much as the original three, but well shot by I don't know how to pronounce his name. Fedon Papa Michael. He's the director of photography. Film. This is
Mhm.
filmed digitally too. It looks pretty good for a digital film.
Nice.
CGI I thought was kind of uneven actually, and this is I think no
Mhm.
small thing to complain about. The de aging is probably the best I've seen, but there's a few CG shots in this movie that really stood out to me, particularly the one of Indy running on top of the train during the prologue. It looked bad enough that I wondered if
Mhm.
it was like stop motion. I noticed a number of visible green screen halos around some of the characters. It's kind of inexcusable for a film that has a budget of almost $300 million.
Yeah, I mean, a good CG or yeah, good CGI is CGI you don't notice, right?
Yeah,
And there were a lot of moments where it was noticeable, but there were probably a lot of moments where we didn't even realize it was CGI. Things like different set pieces, the ability like they've gotten aspects like see like putting in even film extras using CGI. There's probably a lot that we didn't realize that was so.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
But the parts that were like very on the nose, like this feels a little off. Like yes, I agree, it was a little weird.
Now we're going to get into some serious spoilers here. So if you've made it this far and you don't want to hear how the third act of this movie goes down, shut the podcast off now and come back in like I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes. So, some of the third act stuff here, right? Indy gets shot in the chest and he just keeps going for another half hour. And they later explain it as like a shoulder wound, but I swear I have to go back and see it again, but when he first gets shot, I thought it's like square in the chest.
Yeah, no, I thought it was more. I thought it was gonna not necessarily fatal, but a more serious wound.
Yeah. 'Cause he goes on for like a while after he gets shot. Like another, it really is like another half hour. They get on the plane, they jump out of the plane.
Mm-hmm. That's indie for you.
Yeah. Speaking of Indy, wasn't he wanted for murder before he goes to Europe?
Yes,
How did he get on the
yes.
plane?
Like I was just thinking like
Totally
there was a
unexplained.
they
Like when
they
he,
still had the TV and like
yes,
the
yes,
like he was a wanted man.
yeah. It's a pretty serious plot hole. Salah's like, I'll just give you my passport. Did passports? Maybe passports didn't have pictures on them back then, which seems baffling, but that's actually true.
I don't know if did they check luggage back then.
No, he had a no.
He had a bullwhip on.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just they don't explain that at the end of the movie either. Just like does that get wrapped up? You have to
Right,
assume
right.
it
I
did. Like
because by all intents and purposes, he's still a wanted man that's been framed for murder,
yeah,
and the CIA agent that could have vouched for him died,
right,
and so and the scientists that famous scientists that rejected a meeting with the president also has disappeared.
right, right. Yeah. Speaking of him, Mads Mikkelsen's character, I was very disappointed by how the villains died. They all just die in a plane crash. This
Mm.
to me, this absolutely reeks of the rewrites and the reshoots that were rumored here. It really seems like they didn't know what to do with the villains and they were like, crash the plane.
Such a lame way to go out.
Yeah, think about all the memorable villain deaths that we've seen in Indiana Jones.
That were very poetic, right?
Yeah.
Or it felt like there was a bit of justice in how they went out.
Oh, for sure. The opening of the arc. My favorite death is when Donovan drinks the false grail and he just ages into nothing.
Yep. Amazing.
Terrified me as a
Amazing.
kid. He's just like that decaying skeleton. It freaked me
I
out.
mean, what can you do? He chose poorly.
He chose poorly. Yeah, whatever. It's this is pretty lame to kill the villains like this. They just whatever. I did not mind the ancient Roman / Greek setting. What about you? I thought they handled it well.
I thought it was cool. Like it definitely, especially when you think of Indy's character and how cool that must have been for him. But it wasn't really like you spent a majority of that on a plane, so that was kind of a bummer from my perspective.
That's fair. I was a little jarred by it at first, but they had built up to some kind of time jump.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to your point, you only see a lot of it from the plane, but I have to wonder if they had spent a lot of time there. I don't know if that leads to a better place.
I mean, do you almost have enough for a second film? Indiana Jones Adventures in Ancient Rome?
No, I do not want that film. Please, no. I have some questions for you about the time travel in this movie because I'm not quite sure that I fully understand it. Now, to be fair, I've only seen this movie once, but let me walk you through what I've got here. So, Archimedes was working on this dial of destiny when the Romans attacked. Is that correct?
Right, right.
During the attack, this German Air Force plane comes out of the sky and starts shooting people with machine guns, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Archimedes, he knew in the future the dial would be found and that this would happen. We know that because of the descriptions of the plane or the pictures of the planes on his tomb. So
Mm-hmm.
he built a device that allowed the user to find a random wormhole to that exact moment in time. Is that do I have I don't know. Like
It's I'm trying to follow. I
why is there
guess
a
like
time
we're
hole
supposed
to
to say
that?
yes.
How is there a wormhole that goes to that exact moment in time, right? Are there just random vortexes all over the place that take people to random points in history? If so, how did Archimedes even know there was a time hole to go back to the time of the attack? I don't think any of this makes sense.
And let's also remember the point like Archimedes had no idea about continental drift. Let's think about that.
That's the
That
other
totally.
part of it, right? Because
Yeah.
Archimedes tells them you were only supposed to come back and meet me, right? So it's like, did the calculations on the dial not matter?
And also they kind of hinted that there's been like time travel before because Archimedes skeleton had a watch on. And at first I thought, oh, that's gonna be the watch that he takes from the Nazi, or that he takes from Mad's character on the
Right.
beach.
That
But he
wasn't that
gives the
watch?
watch back. He gives the watch back.
Does he?
Yeah, he gives along with the Archimedes out. He say, "These are yours."
I don't even know if we should spend more time thinking about this. I don't think this holds up at all.
No, it's just so confusing.
Yeah. Huh. Let's move on. Indy getting knocked out by Helena. It felt like a cop out to me. This again, I think this is where that rewrite, that reshoot came into play.
Mm-hmm.
I am glad he didn't end up in ancient Syracuse, though. That would have been worse.
It was so jarring, though, just to get like and you're back.
Yeah. It's now John Williams stated that a new ending had to be shot, and he therefore needed to compose a new score for it. I can't find a ton of info on this. One of the reasons I would say this apparently, this film went through extensive reshoots, which significantly
Mm-hmm.
increased the budget. And I can see how
Mm-hmm.
that would impacted things in the third act. But on the contrary, I've also read reports refuting that there weren't any reshoots. Mangold himself has said that there weren't any reshoots. But I don't know why John Williams would lie
Mm-hmm.
about something like that. I don't know. All I can say is this. I hope they never attempt to do another indie movie without some kind of way to use John Williams music because it's going to be a huge absence if they ever do it. I don't know who like so you we talked about all the screenwriters on this. I wonder whose film this was really it sounds like a bunch of ideas that were just cobbled together. It's not George Lucas's story, right? Is it James
No,
Mangold's, the Butterworth brothers, Harrison Ford's, Kathleen Kennedy's, the Disney think tank? Who knows?
I mean they had so many credits listed, as you said, and at the end of the day, I think we got a watered down version of all of them.
Yeah. Anything to add about the production?
a film that's gone through so much development hell was finally able to see the light of day. You're going to have things that are a little confusing or maybe were ideas from other scripts. I feel like that was very clear.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm glad we were able to get. I was telling you this, before we recorded. There are the aspects of Indiana Jones that you want to see, and those still came through. It still felt like an Indiana Jones adventure.
So, in terms of why this movie wasn't better, it's too long, the characters and some of the writing and the production in general. Let's wrap this up and talk about whether or not we liked it. I'll go first. I don't think this movie's great, but it is not the disaster that some reviews are saying. I think it's okay. This
Mm-hmm.
is an example where I do think that 66% Rotten Tomatoes score is spot on. The prologue was fun to watch, even though it went on too long. Most of the movie I felt went on too long. The rest of the movie has some really exciting, entertaining stuff in it. I think parts of it feel like vintage Indiana Jones. Other parts, not so much. But it does have good performances, just maybe too many characters. Indy isn't the sole protagonist, which may rub people the wrong way. I didn't love all of the storytelling decisions in the third act. Some of it just flat out didn't make sense to me. But I did find it pretty watchable. This is not a dumpster fire like some of the reviews are saying. If anyone tells you this movie's horrible, I would not agree with that at all. It has a lot of heart. It was directed by someone who clearly cares about the material. James Mangold did a worthy job here. I will definitely see this movie again at some point in the future, but for now, my initial reaction to this is I give it a rating of a C.
Nice, nice. Well put, well put. I think that this movie was fun. I think that it was good to be able to dive back in, and in a way that, from my perspective, I like seeing a subversion of the character expectation and the archetype. And I think Mangold proved that he's dealt with some of these themes before, so it felt like a good fit trying to direct that for Indiana Jones. Part of it, as you felt like this is good entertaining vintage indie, but otherwise some of it didn't hold up. But at the same time, like, I had fun, and I feel like that's what I think of when I want to see Indiana Jones. I want to see adventure, I want to see fun, and I feel like it was able to capture that. So I feel like for a film that, what was it, like 15 years between Crystal Skull and
Yeah.
Dial of
Yeah.
Destiny, like, if this is what we got, like, that's honestly a miracle. And with that context and knowing, and like my experience at the theater, I have to give it a C plus.
Pretty favorable. Where does it stack up for you against Kingdom of the Crystal Skull?
I think it's now, admittedly, it's been a while since I've seen Crystal Skull, but my general reaction is that it's better than Crystal Skull. But I should probably revisit that movie again soon, which I'm sure we will,
Yeah, we
and
will.
we'll see how I feel about this movie in a couple years from now.
That's also what I thought. Walking out of the theater, I was like, well, this seemed better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But yeah, that may change. You never know. I definitely want to see this again, and I do want to see Crystal Skull again. Do you want any more of these movies at this point?
Absolutely not. Like, I like
Me neither.
I like visiting it once, but like,
Yeah.
please just let Indiana Jones, like, remain as Indiana Jones, right?
Yeah, I mentioned this earlier how I thought Crystal Skull actually gave the character like a worthy, happy, satisfying ending. This
Mm-hmm.
movie was like the flip side of that coin. It was a very awkward ending for the character.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want any more of these movies. Indiana Jones
No.
belongs in the past. These great films that we enjoy, they all belong in the past. They're classics for a reason. Maybe I sound like a grumpy old man, but like I really do believe they do not make movies like they used to. For the most part, it seems like Hollywood is incapable of making these kinds of movies anymore. I'm saying almost
Yeah.
because there are some great films over the past few years. I'm not disputing that. But
I agree with you. I agree.
Here's a thought. I would wager that a lot of fans are seriously questioning Lucasfilm's credibility at this point. So Disney paid $4 billion to acquire Lucasfilm back in 2012, right? What do you
Hmm.
think they could sell it for right now?
Oh man.
While you think about that, just think about this.
Yeah.
Star Wars has been devalued, would you safe to say? That
Mm,
sequel trilogy didn't go well. It made money, but it didn't go well for them.
I think like without looking at the numbers of what that's bringing in, not just the films, but in terms of like I'm talking merchandise, I'm talking TV series, I'm talking like park figures, I still think it's a very very profitable franchise.
I think it is profitable for those reasons that you just mentioned, but as far as the IP goes, they're running out of stuff. Like, what do you do with Star Wars at this point? Indiana Jones is a dead end. You're not going to make this movie with another actor.
Yeah,
Who's going to replace Harrison Ford? Like, I don't see that
which
happening.
is
That Willow
which is
series
probably
that they
why.
tried to do on Disney Plus
Oh, trash.
flopped so badly that they took it off the platform. They're running out of IP. Like, what do they do?
It's wanting to profit off of the IP, but there's no easy way to pass on legacy because of the expectations that the previous films just set, which are just so unrealistic for how good they were.
Yeah.
And that's a sad reality. But
Well,
before,
that's
I
something.
almost want. Well, I mean, I want to think of like I want to think of this. You know, I want to throw this out there. What was before Indiana Jones? What was before Star Wars? What captured the public's attention in similar ways? Because
Nothing
it's
like that.
not like yeah. So how do you drive writers' creativity and a studio to come up with something novel and new that can capture people's attention in the same way? And I think like that's the $1 million question, but I don't think it's going to be producing another Indiana Jones in 20 years.
That's why I say that even if you don't like Christopher Nolan's movies, we need to protect him at all costs because he is one of the only filmmakers today who seems interested in telling original stories. I'm not talking about like
Mm-hmm.
indie filmmakers. Of course they want to tell original stories, but yeah, I don't know what Lucasfilm does with new movies.
It's hard, man.
They can keep adding to the Star Wars universe, but the more you add at this point, the further away you're getting from what Star Wars is. It was just a
They're
creation of
just gonna
George
keep.
Lucas, for better or worse. That's what it was. And
They're
what is
just
it
gonna keep
now?
milking it, man.
Yeah, like what is it now? It's just whatever algorithm that Disney's, committee spits out. That's what they'll make.
Look, it's like let's do Star Wars but animated. Let's do Star Wars but babies. Like there's just
Yeah.
the. Anyway, is that the Dial of Destiny? Are we calling it?
Yeah, we're calling it. That's it.
All right, there we go, folks. Dial of Destiny. If you haven't seen it, well, hopefully you haven't listened to this whole episode if you haven't seen it yet, because that's a lot of spoilers. But
I think it
um,
would honestly only enhance the film going experience.
it will
But that's
only
just me.
enhance the experience.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, right
please,
in.
if you can explain the time travel aspects of this film, please let us know. Educate us.
Yeah, who knows? That may get addressed. Like this film just came out yesterday at the time of recording, like I'm sure tons of
Right,
more information will surface in the coming months. But yeah,
right,
so we
right.
are recording this on the 30th of June, which means it is technically 4th of July weekend. So for those of you in the US, have a happy Independence Day. For those of you outside the US, have a nice weekend anyway. What are we covering next, Anton? I
Oh
have to
yeah.
I have to intercede here.
Um.
I have another release timed movie that I'd like to
Oh, do we
discuss.
have a guest?
We
Oh,
don't have a guest,
which
but
one?
as
What
you
do we
know,
have? Do we have a
the
guest?
new Mission Impossible movie is coming out in a couple of weeks.
So
In honor
yes,
of
yes,
that,
perfect timing.
yes, in honor of the new Mission Impossible movie that is coming out, I would like to not cover the new Mission Impossible movie. I would like to cover the first Mission
Right,
Impossible movie, which came out in 1996.
John Carter of Mars.
That was certainly an
Just kidding,
impossible
folks.
mission for Disney. Yeah, so
But no,
that's
yeah,
what I would
the
like to discuss.
all right, let's do it.
All right, next week, Mission
That'll
Impossible.
be fun.
What do you want to do after that? You want to pick one now?
I was gonna say I want to do monster with emotion. I wanted to do Ang Lee's Hulk, but I'm curious if we can maybe bring some Japanese animation into our film reviews and see how does Death Note stack up to the expectations.
Yes. This is going to be a good one. All
All
right.
right,
Next week, Mission
but we'll see.
Impossible. Week after that, Death Note.
All right. Well, there we have it. Get ready for the next couple of weeks, and again, happy 4th of July to our U.S. listeners and to everyone else. Have a great weekend.